So a little bit of background for me for the new faces here. I think I see some names that I haven't met before, which is great. Like I said, I've been with TechLaunch for about 3 years, and my background, my PhD is in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. And have, since leaving that kind of the science realm of things, I've been working in the tech transfer world to help other researchers really commercialize their technologies, which is exactly what TLA does. And so really we are here, we are a tech transfer office, and our purpose is to really help you have your research make a larger impact. So we want, your publications to get out there, and we want to help your technology move off, from what you're doing at the bench and really grow and become a product and really help impact lives in the world. And the way that we do that, and kind of our vehicle for moving things, is intellectual property.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, just to reiterate, what Caitlin said, that our purpose is to facilitate commercialization of technology that's generated at the university. And to facilitate this commercialization, first we need to facilitate innovation at the bench and in the labs. And like Caitlin said, we use intellectual property as that vehicle. And what I'd like as a take home ultimately is that intellectual property is our friend. IP, or intellectual property, is an economic driver that TechLaunch uses to affect its purpose. It's also the thread that connects the services that we provide. But most importantly, IP is the mechanism that we use to reinvest in innovation. And I'll give you a quick example of how intellectual property directly affects the reinvestment opportunity for you. So for example, if you are a patent inventor, an inventor on a patent, and TLA licenses one of your patents for you, then you and your lab get some of the revenue that we collect. So in that sense, you are a direct beneficiary of revenue from a license, and you can then reinvest it into your research objectives. And how does this work? There's a lot of different forms of intellectual property. So collectively, intellectual property is a way for the university to describe and to capture its ownership rights that the university has in our work, in our science, and in the innovation. And intellectual property, as the name says, it's a form of property. It's the same, we have the same bundle of rights we do in intellectual property that we do in other properties like real estate, like our home. And similar to our home, we can sell our home, we could watch the asset grow in its value, and we can Airbnb our home, right? And that's kind of exactly how we treat intellectual property. It's an asset where we could watch it grow, we can sell it, and we can license it. Just like actually Airbnb is a license because you are allowing somebody into your house and they're gonna pay you for it. So we kind of do the same, it's the same model for intellectual property. And what I'd like to do is just quickly go through some of the forms of intellectual property. And I'm sure that patents is the first on this list. Patents are, I'm sure, the most commonly known and the most used because patents cover just about anything. Processes, patents cover machines, they cover manufacturing, methods, compositions of matter, and any improvements on any of those things. The only real requirements is that the intellectual property that is going to be patented be new, unobvious, and useful. Okay, and then a couple of quick fun facts about patents is that when you get a patent, you actually don't necessarily, you're not necessarily given the right yourself to use it, but what you're given is the right to stop other people from using it. And that's just a fun fact I figured I'd throw out there. But one of the two key points I wanted to touch on is inventorship when it comes to patents. And I think this is really important in your lab because one, inventorship by law is dictated by law. And without an agreement otherwise, the inventor of the technology, and who then is the inventor on the patent, is actually the owner of the patent. But here at the university, we all have an agreement with our employer, right? That anything we invent or we generate is then owned by the university. But the catch here and the caveat is that if you are hiring, let's say, an outside consultant or somebody to do some work for you, independent contractor, without an agreement with them, they would, if they generate some intellectual property, they would actually own it. And so that's an important point, I think, to bring up, because it's something that Tech Launch will help you manage and make sure that all the work that you do and all the work that comes out of your lab is kept in you as your investment. The other thing I think it's important to bring up about inventorship is that incorrect inventorship on a patent could invalidate a patent. And I think this is important because it's a little bit different than what we know as authorship on publications. Just quickly, an inventor on a patent is anybody who contributed intellectually to the claims in that particular patent. So, and I'm sure if you've had any experience with filing patents, you put a whole bunch of stuff into the patent. Let's say you have some compounds that you're interested in patenting. Well, as required by law, you put in a method of making those compounds, you'll put in methods of using those compounds, and maybe a whole bunch of other descriptors in your patent application. But you may, at the end of the day, only be claiming compounds themselves. So it's only those individuals who contributed to the compounds or the design of the compounds that would be the inventors on a patent. Maybe not the folks who contributed to identifying a target that would lend itself to methods of using the compound, or those who figured out how to synthesize it or scale it up for industrial purposes. They may be other inventors on claims directed more towards those things. So that's just an important tidbit about patents that I wanted to bring up, because I think it would help in your day-to-day business. And just quickly, I'll run through some of the other types of intellectual property. We've got trademarks. Trademarks just cover the look and feel of a symbol that is a common knowledge. Everybody knows the golden arches of McDonald's. You see the golden arches, you kind of know what kind of consistency in your product you're going to get. I won't say quality, I'll say consistency. Copyright. Copyright is an expression of mostly artistic expression, then put in a tangible medium, so a painting, so a book, music, everything but it has to be in a tangible medium, so the music needs to be written down.
Or software.
Or software, yeah, thank you. And yeah, jump in, Caitlin, if you want to talk about software, because that's not my expertise, so I kind of go over pretty quickly.
Software, that's one of our main forms of copyright that we do at the university. And we actually have someone that we work with here and that's his area of expertise. So if you're working with software, that's something we can also help with and would fall under copyright.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about it, you could always contact Caitlin or myself or anybody at TLA, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just other forms of intellectual property. And the reason I'm going through these is because, the bottom line is the university owns most of what we generate, right? All of our results and our data. And I want to also emphasize, it's a very synergistic relationship. It works very well to help continue to be able to innovate. And so other types of intellectual property are, like I said, trade secrets, which is what it sounds like. It's a secret. Once the trade secret is no longer a secret, even if that's because somebody blurted it out when they weren't supposed to, it is no longer secret or protectable.
And that's actually why, I just want to jump, that's actually why, the university very rarely does trade secrets, because as a public institution, we are not good at keeping secrets, and we like to tell the research that we do and publish on it. So that's something that we don't see that often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's know-how, which kind of like fills in the gaps of intellectual property. It's just, everybody has their own talents, and that's what's captured in know-how. Intellectual property is a form of property, like I mentioned. And then the last I have on the list is licenses and contracts, and we'll talk about that more later. But what I want to say about contracts is that contracts is a deal between two or more parties, generally two parties. And before you could put the words of a contract together, there needs to be an understanding between between the parties. And in a utopian world and optimal circumstances, first we'd have the deal all put together. Like, for example, if it is a license, what patents are the other party going to license? How long do they want to license it for? How much are they going to pay? And we'd have all those terms kind of worked out between both parties. And then we write it down in the contract, which memorializes the deal. So just to give you some background. And, again, at the end of the day, I just wanted to describe all the forms of intellectual property so that you know how we use intellectual property. As we move forward in the slides here, we're going to go on to our process and all the services we provide. And I'm hoping that my description of intellectual property will help you see that the IP is a thread between all the services that we could help you with.
Yeah. So before we go on with, some of our services, we just want to take you through our process. And what I think most people know us for is this commercialization process. And so it all starts with the research that you do in your lab. Once you have an idea, or even if you think you have an idea, you come to us, we have a conversation, you disclose that invention. From there, some of the services that we have is a market research team that looks at the prior art, the commercialization assessment, looking at the landscape, what companies are in this space, and what is that landscape look like for market purposes. From there, we work with you and attorneys. So we use outside counsel who are specialized in various areas. We pick them on their areas of expertise depending on the project. And we work to protect that IP in one form or another, the various forms that Mitch had just mentioned. And then from there, what we really do is our kind of the way that we get it out into the world is through a license. So the way we do that is either licensing to an existing company or licensing to a startup company, which is usually self-directed by the faculty. And we have services to help in, product development as well as supporting your startup if that is something that you are interested in doing. And then our goal is to have that licensee really grow that product, invest in that product, fund that product, and do continued research so that ultimately it makes an impact in the end. And so that is kind of how we bring everything together and a little bit about our process. But what we really wanted to go over today is some of these other services that we offer that a lot of people don't know that we do. So it's not just all about the patents and the licensing. We can help you with supporting other areas where you touch IP. And so some of the ways that we do that is through other types of contracts. So we can help you with non-disclosure agreements. So say you want to disclose your technology to a company, to a collaborator outside of the U of A. And we want to make sure that that information is protected and that they don't have the right to then go tell everybody else about your invention. We want to make sure that, the conversations are kept confidential. And so when it revolves around you sharing your IP, we can help set those agreements up. Another one that I know a lot of people don't always think about is when you're transferring materials to other institutions. So maybe it's a plasmid, maybe it's a mouse model, maybe you're sending compounds for someone to test. And a lot of researchers just, they just want their collaborator or someone else to have that material so that they can further their research or help out their collaborator or whatever it may be. And they sometimes forget to do the material transfer agreement. And, we're really here to help you in that process and protect your materials. Because if you just send them and to someone else, then you've kind of lost control of that material. They can then go off and use that material in whatever way they see fit. And Mitch brought up a good analogy the other day to me, which was a blender. And that, I don't know where the blender came from, but if you give someone your blender, you may...
It's important if you're having a party, and
yes.
So the blender becomes so important on Friday and Saturday night, but maybe not Tuesday night. So that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
And and eventually you're going to want your blender back, and you don't want a bunch of other people using it. And so that's really what this material transfer agreement does. It's an agreement with the other institution or the company that you're sending materials to that dictates the way in which they can use the material, how long they can use the material, and really protects your rights. And so all of that hard work that you put into developing it, you still maintain that control over it, and you know what they're doing with your materials. So we can really support in those ways. And some of the other services we offer are around grant support, and this is becoming, I feel like we're seeing it more and more in the types of grants that researchers are applying for. There's more sections about commercialization plans. You know, what are you going to do when you do X, Y, and Z in your research? How are you going to move that forward? And I think a lot of that is because the federal government is ultimately looking at the impact. What they're giving this money to research, what is that leading to in the community, and, you know, in production of how is that really making an impact. And one of the ways that they measure that is through commercialization. So we can help you with some of that language around how that would work, how we handle that, what is involved with that, and it kind of reiterating to the government or the agency that you're working with for your grant on what our process is and how that's going to be helpful for you as you continue on in your research, and that we will support you through that whole process. And we can also offer letters of support, especially if you are, you know, developing IP and we know you're going to develop IP, or you think you're going to develop IP, that we're aware, you know, you've talked to us, and when and if that time comes, we will support you in that process of moving IP forward and protecting the IP that we can.
Yeah, and I thought I would just throw in a little bit more about the contracts, like the non-disclosure agreement and the material transfer agreement, just by giving an example. You know, again, the bottom line is property. You know, the university, for us, and again, it's a synergistic relationship, owns either the secrets that you want to tell somebody or the material that you want to send to somebody. And we certainly want to foster those relationships. But let's say you send out some compounds that you're very interested in researching down the road, and without an understanding of what the other party, your collaborator, is going to do with it, they could actually take those compounds, they could share them with their friends, they can improve on them and file patent applications, and actually it could bite you in the butt, because it could prevent you from actually doing further research with those compounds. And so that's why in this process of managing the intellectual property, it's really good. I know sometimes it's a pain in the neck to have a contract put together, and it might take a little extra time up front, but in the long run, it could really help further your research, and it could help build collaborations too with outside parties. So it's really important to, you know, to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's in the long run.
Absolutely. So one of the other services that we offer that I think is one of our favorite services, and probably a favorite of researchers, is our asset development program. And so this is different than grant funding, normal grant funding. Our goal is to fund a project that just needs that little extra something. Maybe it's a proof of concept. Maybe it's, you know, 1 or 2 experiments that will push it towards a license. So maybe we've had discussions with companies and they say, we're really interested in what you're doing, but we have, you know, there's some questions still remaining. And if we can answer those questions with a little bit of investment, then that's exactly what this fund is for, to help answer those questions and move it towards a license. And predominantly, most of our asset development comes out of the health sciences, because there's just so much really great research going on, and we're happy to help facilitate those. It's an open enrollment process, so there's no deadline. You know, it's not like once a year, twice a year. Reach out to us. We can talk about your project if what you're doing and planning on doing qualifies, and we'll have some internal conversations about that process and see if we can fund, you know, a project that you're working on to really help further the IP and get it closer towards commercialization. And our fund is about $1 million annually, and we like to usually try to fund about 16 projects a year. And I think the average is around $40,000-ish, but it varies depending on the needs of that project. So please reach out to us, because we would love to work with you on a project and help move things forward. Another part, kind of a service that we can offer, is our commercialization network. And we actually utilize this network at almost every stage in our commercialization process. And what this is a group of individuals that we've worked really hard to cultivate. Their industry expertise, they have industry expertise in a wide variety of areas. Some of them are local to Tucson, some of them are throughout the country. I think we even have a couple of international individuals in our network, and they can help answer questions. So maybe we're stuck on a question, and if we can find the right person in the right area, that's what this commercialization network is for, that we can reach out to, ask questions, ask advice. Maybe they have contacts in a company that we can utilize. And so we lean on them to give advice and help us move things forward. And we have a smaller subsection of this network that we meet with about twice a month to really discuss technologies, and they help us, you know, find connections for startups, think about how we can do our asset developments in ways that would make sense and make it attractive for a licensing and commercialization types of questions. So we really rely on them, and we can utilize that network to further, you know, connections for you as well as you're moving your project forward.
And so, Caitlin, let me ask you a question about the commercialization network. They're also candidates for talent. They're a talent pool as well, right? If we're
Absolutely.
looking for CEOs or CFOs to help universities build startups, right?
Yes, quite a few of our members, I would say a huge chunk of them, that's exactly what they're looking for. You know, some of them are kind of keeping their ear to the ground and trying to find new opportunities. Maybe they want to do a startup, maybe they want to be an advisor on a company, and a lot of them step in those roles. And we've made connections over the years for CEOs, for scientific advisors, advisory board members, a wide variety of things. And so we're happy to put people in touch. And most of the individuals, like I said, are industry experts, whether they're scientists or business people. Sometimes they're both, and they've had experience in a wide variety, you know, big pharma, startup companies, R&D, a lot of things that they've, you know, laid hands on and really just had experience with that they can help us with. And that kind of dovetails into the other half of our office. So Mitch and I are part of the licensing team, and we really help on the patenting process, protect the IP and move it forward into a license. But when a faculty stands up and they, you know, say that they're very interested in doing a startup, we are on board to help support that. And we know that that is it's not an easy task, and we've really built our team. And so we have a really great venture development team. And that consists of our venture development director, but also our mentors in residence. So we have 4 of them. They are individuals who have started their own startups, sold companies, and done a variety of things, and are now helping give back to the university by helping researchers ask those questions. You know, what does your business model look like? How is your, who's going to be on your team? What kind of questions do you need to ask? How are you going to get funding? What really lay out that path for you, so so you can understand it, and they can meet with you over time and really give advice and really help with that coaching. And they're in a variety of different areas. And so we really rely on our venture development team in helping our startups move forward. And another service that we offer that ties in with our venture development is a program called NSF I-Corps, which we are, I believe, a site for. And so this is an NSF funded program in which individuals really learn how to ask questions and figure out who their customers are. So it's built on interviewing potential customers, figuring out if what their product is, what they're offering is something that people are interested in, and how to go through that process. So it really helps them think about their product at an early stage, and customer discovery and customer development, and figuring out how they're going to move their product forward. And we run that, I believe, 3 or 4 times a year. We're running one right now, actually, and looking to start another cohort soon. And all of this can be done through Zoom. We've done our last 2 cohorts completely through Zoom very successfully. Eileen is actually on this call, and she runs that for us and has been incredibly successful in doing that.
Can I jump in with a question on the NSF course? So what is the process like if people are interested in that? Is there an application process, or do they just reach out to you?
So first, just reach out to us, but there is an application process, and actually Eileen is on here, and she runs that for us. But we put together an application. There's several things on there that you need to identify: an entrepreneurial lead, who the scientist is, what the technology is. And then Eileen matches that with advisors, and so people in our commercialization network. And then it is a 6-week course, correct, Eileen?
Yes, it is 6 weeks. And I just put some links in the chat. If people are interested, there's just the overview, and then there's the application page.
Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, and we're getting ready to run a new one soon. And so it's a 6-week course. It provides funding to do some of that customer discovery. And, so if you need to go to a conference, though, right now it's a little bit iffy on those conferences if they're in person or not. But it provides a small amount of funding to do that customer discovery. And that 6 weeks course, it's once a week, and really provides that instruction on how to do this process. And then it's constant feedback. So the companies work together, they present what they found, their ideas, and how they're going to develop that further. And so it's really a back and forth program. Any other questions right now? Cool. Well, so those are, I think, a huge chunk of our services that we can offer. But Mitch and I just wanted to go through at least, 1 or 2 of some success stories and ways that faculty have really reached out to us and been very active and engaged with TLA. And one of these is a company called Desert DX that was started by Dr. Mark Nelson, Dr. Bernard Fucher, and Lucas Verba. And they have really made this new liquid biopsy blood test screening is really what their technology revolves around. But they've worked with us really well over the years. They disclosed their technology. We helped protect it. They went through the I-Corps program. We've written letters of support for them. We've set up NDAs before they licensed the technology, as they were working with collaborators and individuals, and MTAs as they've sent some of their materials off. So they've really taken advantage of the services that we offer, and they're now a launch company. They've licensed the technology from the U of A and really working hard on moving this forward. And before the license, they were very heavily involved with our venture development team, and worked very closely with one of our mentors in residence to really help push this forward. And so I just hope that people kind of hear this story and see that we can help them. Even if you don't want to do a startup, there's a wide variety of things that we can help as you move your research forward.
Yeah, here's another story. This is a power couple that I've been working with individually. They each have started their own company. They both have growing patent portfolios around their compounds that they're developing. They both are engaged with independent contractors and consultants to help them. And we've been working through that process with them as well to make sure that they maintain all their intellectual property. We have, this is before I got here, but I understand that their CEO is somebody that they met through TLA's networking. So they're really enjoying a lot of the services that TechLaunch provides, and they're doing really well. And look at how happy they are.
And so, you know, we went over our services, but just we like to tell you about what some of our startups do for the economy. And we were lucky enough that we worked with, you know, the McGuire Center, and they put together this long study of the economic impact that the startups out of the U of A provide. And so their study went over a 3-year period from 2016 to 2018. And during that period, you know, 71 startups were launched. They generated well over 25 million in revenue and created over 5,000 jobs. So this is all a direct impact to the economy based on these startups, which started as research here at the university. And so we really love to see, this is exactly what TechLaunch does, is to see this impact through to the end. What is this doing for our local economy, the greater economy, and not just at the startup level, but as we license things to existing companies as well, it really has a greater impact. That sometimes as we're, you know, diving into our research, it's hard to see the bigger picture sometimes. So we're here to help you with that and really help you make more of an impact on your research. And these are just a couple of products and services that are available and being developed, you know, have been licensed to companies. Some of these are existing companies, and some of these were startups out of the U of A, but in a huge variety of areas. So I know Mitch and I are both in the health sciences, but TLA works throughout the whole university, and we've seen a lot of really very neat technologies come out and help the community and become a product that can actually help people in their day-to-day lives, which is really exciting. And so if you have any questions or want to know anything, we're happy to help you.
Caitlin?
Yeah.
This is Paul. I just want to chime in on this one. One story I think for this audience that's really great is the Alcon story at the top right.
Yes.
It's a technology out of the College of Optical Sciences, but that professor was Jim Schwegerling. He developed a new trifocal lens that was licensed to Alcon, and now it's helping like over 500 million people or 500,000 people see.
Absolutely.
The market is growing. So the opportunity to invent and not do a startup, but invent, protect the technology, and then license it to an existing company, the opportunity for impact is just huge.
Yeah, and what I actually really love about that story even more is that he needed these. And so when they were approved in Europe, I believe, he flew over and he actually got his own technology put in his own eyes, and now has used these trifocal lenses that are being developed by Alcon, which is just really cool. I feel like it's such a full circle story, right? He developed this technology, he himself actually needed it, and now it's helping him, and then literally hundreds of thousands of other people. And I think we'll see that grow as they continue on the commercialization path for this. So that's great. Thank you, Paul, for pointing that out, because that is such a cool story. And I think just to wrap up, we saved this for the end, but we talked about all of our services. We talked about our processes, things that we do and things that we can help you with. And we wanted to kind of step back and show you what that looks like actually at the university level. So obviously it starts with your research. And these numbers that I'm going to show you are from fiscal year 19. Our new numbers from fiscal year 20, I believe, are being published around the end of the month or so. But roughly every year, we've been doing about 260, 280, and it's, as you can see, those invention disclosures have grown throughout the years. And so these are inventions that you're disclosing to us throughout the entire university. Lots of really great ideas going on. And those invention disclosures ultimately turn into IP protection. So again, this IP thread flowing throughout the entire process. In 2019 fiscal year, we filed 341 patents and had 56 patents issued, which if you know the patent process, and you certainly do not have to, that is what we will help you with, but it is a process. And so from filing to issuance is several years. And so what we're seeing now, these 56 patents issued, are from our efforts several years ago. So we're really excited to see that continue to grow, especially as we've increased the amount of patent protection that we've been doing at the university and really protecting more ideas at the university. And like I mentioned, the way that we get that out to the world, whether to an existing company or to a startup, is by doing licensing and option deals. And so we do about 100 a year, which is 100 really great ideas getting out into the world. And we're excited to see where all of those go and continue that moving forward. And then we don't always like to talk about the money, but of course that's exciting. And so that's not something that we focus on, but it is something that we are excited to bring in for you and for the university through your inventions. And so last fiscal year of 2019, there was 5.9 million in royalties and other income, and we did 11 startups. And actually in fiscal year 20, we broke our 100 startups. So now the U of A has now officially done 100 startups, which is really exciting. And that's really great advancement of technology at the U of A. And again, all of this only starts because of all of the research that you do. And so as the research dollars coming into the U of A grow, these numbers continue to grow as well, because you're just really doing a lot more research. And we're here to help you through that process and help you in your commercialization process. So please feel free to reach out to either Mitch or I. Even if you don't know that you have IP, even if you aren't sure, reach out. We'd love to have a conversation with you, discuss your technologies, or just discuss your research, what you're doing, what your plan is for your research. And hopefully we can work with you. And so if you have any questions, please reach out to us now or later. We're happy to help.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please do.
I'm currently a senior at the University of Arizona with the College of Science. Mm-hmm. I'm currently working on a little startup with a couple of my friends. It's called Windmill. And we took part in the Arizona Forge Incubator and Startup Tucson, kind of to get started with everything. So we've come to a point where we are close to a minimum viable product, but we do not have a roadmap to how to go to the next level, how to get it to a point where other people can use our software and use our API and whatnot, but at the same time it stays ours. So like I was listening to the talk, so I wanted to get in touch. Maybe how would that happen? Like where I can sit down and talk to somebody and get a roadmap.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And it's, we are set up so that we handle U of A IP. And so being an undergraduate, we actually don't own your IP, at least that most cases. That's not always the case if you're working in a lab or something. But if you're not employed by the university, then we don't necessarily own your IP, which means that we don't have ownership or control over that. That being said, the NSF I-Corps is open to other individuals. It doesn't just have to be U of A owned IP. And it sounds like that could potentially be a path forward. Eileen, jump in if you have anything to add as well. But we've taken student groups before in our I-Corps and that have that U of A connection, correct, Eileen?
That is correct. If you look at the the links I put in the chat, there are some requirements. And if your team meets those requirements, it includes you needed a few positions filled on the team, you need an advisor, and things like that. If you have a team that meets those requirements, we are happy to help students, undergrads or graduate students, through this process.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, if you have any questions about intellectual property, I'm happy to just talk to you about them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Basically, it's I have no prior experience. It's not like I have a big portfolio of opening startups, and there's no information. Everything is Googled, talk to a few people, and that's where I am at. So any help that I can get in this seems to be a more professional setting to actually do things the right way. And I would like to do it the right way rather than get into trouble afterwards.
Right. Right. And I think you're thinking along the right lines, because if you start publishing, disclosing, you could lose some patent rights, and patents aren't important. I'm always talking about patents, but that's what I've been doing. They're important from the very beginning to the very end. So feel free to reach out, and we could just talk about it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I do think you're taking all of the right steps already. But I think that it'd be worthwhile to looking into the NSF I-Corps, because that does provide a lot of foundation. You learn a lot through it, and you also make other connections. And so if you meet those requirements, I think it's something that you should definitely look into.
Yes, I'll definitely be looking into that. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions from anybody today before we wrap up? All right, it looks like that's it. Caitlin, Mitch, and everybody at TLA, thank you so much for joining in on this today and for your presentation. This will be archived on the University of Arizona Health Sciences YouTube in the next few days. So I'll send out a link to everybody that registered with that. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody else, for jumping in too.
Absolutely. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you again.